Good evening and welcome to Chicago Tonight. I'm Paris Schutz. Brandis Friedman is on assignment. On the show tonight,
it's the price of gasoline has gone up very, very dramatically.
Politicians eye relief, but that too comes with consequences. Environmentalists say a casino along the Chicago River is worrisome, why they're concerned about the potential casino sites. The Lakeview Binny's was once a popular destination for theater fans. The history behind it in an all-new Ask Jeffrey. And the artistry of miniature interiors at the Art Institute. But first, some of today's top stories. Reaction flows in today to WTTW's investigation into GOP gubernatorial candidate Richard Irvin and his record of taking campaign contributions from businesses, getting millions worth of contracts from the city of Aurora, where he is currently mayor. Irvin's GOP primary opponents weighed in today. Quote, businessman Gary Rabine says Richard Irvin turns out to be more like Mike Madigan than the reformer this state badly needs. The last thing the state of Illinois needs is another governor in prison. Meanwhile, State Senator Darren Bailey issued a statement saying, quote, career Democrat Richard Irvin's pay-to-play approach as mayor of Aurora is one of the many red flags surrounding his campaign. You cannot clean up the corruption in Springfield by sending someone who has made a career through corrupt and self-serving political moves. Downstate venture capitalist Jesse Sullivan says, quote, everywhere we go, we hear that Illinoisans are sick and tired of career politicians on both sides of the aisle who use public office to benefit themselves and their friends. The WTTW investigation uncovered a disturbing, though unsurprising, pattern of behavior, and Mayor Irvin has a lot of questions to answer. Attorney Paul Schimpf is also running in the GOP primary field, and you can read WTTW's full investigation on our website. Meanwhile, Governor J.B. Pritzker claims Republicans have politicized Illinois' parole board, making it, quote, much more difficult to get members appointed. This in response to both Republican and Democratic senators voting against his nomination of Eleanor Wilson to the board in a 31-15 vote. Wilson is a longtime consultant and a godmother to former President Barack Obama's daughters.
To have Republicans attack them and their character and their biographies, to have Republicans essentially trying to tear apart this agency of government. I mean, this is what the GQP has been all about, tearing government apart.
Oriol James, another Pritzker nominee, resigned yesterday shortly before his nomination was considered. The 15-seat board is down to 6 members. The Emmett Till Anti-Lynching Act is officially signed into law. President Joe Biden held a White House signing ceremony earlier today for the bill, which makes lynching a federal hate crime. The Senate unanimously passed the bill earlier this month. It was named after Till, the black Chicago teenager who was kidnapped, tortured, and murdered in 1955. Illinois Congressman Bobby Rush, the bill's sponsor, attended today's signing, saying, quote, when I think of what this means, that we can finally provide justice for the victims of this heinous act, that we will be able to reckon with our nation's legacy of lynching, and that we will once and for all send a strong message that we will not stand for these abhorrent crimes, I am elated. The FDA approves a second Pfizer and Moderna booster shot for people 50 and older. The news comes ahead of what could be a rise in COVID cases due to the BA.2 Omicron subvariant. This decision opens a pathway for a 4th dose of the vaccine for those in this age group who are at least 4 months out from their previous booster. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention has yet to comment on the announcement. The University of Chicago's Booth School of Business has been named the top business school in the country. UChicago tied for first place with the University of Pennsylvania's Wharton School in the latest ranking from U.S. News & World Report. Northwestern's Kellogg School of Management tied for 3rd with Stanford. The report ranked a total of 134 institutions. And up next, price relief at the gas pump, that is. We share details right after this.
Chicago Tonight is made possible in part by Alexandra and John Nichols, the Jim and Kay Mabey family, the Polk Brothers Foundation, and the support of these donors.
It's impossible to ignore. The price of gas is much higher than it was just a couple of months ago, and it's several bucks more a gallon on average than it was a couple of years ago. How much of that is attributable to taxes, and is there anything officials can do about it? Amanda Binny joins us now with more. Amanda.
Yeah, Paris, the answer, what can be done about it, is of course complex, but it is something that politicians are certainly talking about. By the way, the increasing price of gas, not just anecdotal, even before the war in Ukraine, put a strain on the international supplies. The price of gasoline was going up after dipping when the pandemic had begun. Now, a lot of factors contribute to what you pay at the pump. There's global events, distribution, marketing, and yes, taxes. And here is a look at what you pay at the pump if you go to a gas station here in the city. Federal tax of 18.4 cents a gallon, and an Illinois tax right now 39.2 cents a gallon. In Cook County also adds 6 cents a gallon, and Chicago's tax 8 cents a gallon. That adds up to a composite of about 72 cents per gallon in state, local, federal taxes. By the way, that is excluding still the sales tax. Now, all those taxes that I just talked about, those are flat taxes per gallon, known broadly as motor fuel taxes, in which a report from the state's nonpartisan fiscal forecasting agency puts it, are not impacted if the crude costs of gas are hiked. Because our motor fuel tax rate is based on consumption, not on price, the dramatic increase in motor fuel prices over the last several months does not equate to a corresponding increase in motor fuel tax revenues. But as I mentioned, there is more. There's also a sales tax on gasoline in Illinois, sales tax rate of 6.25%. And with that, the higher the price of motor fuel, the higher amount that the state collects. Now, let's go back to that first group of taxes, though. Some of those did increase recently. The cities went up from 5 cents to 8 cents a gallon during the pandemic. And then Illinois, it doubled. In 2019, went from 19 cents to 38 cents a gallon. Picked up some more in July, and it is set to increase again this summer. And that's because of a law Governor J.B. Pritzker signed in 2019, the state's capital bill that ties the state motor fuel tax to inflation, or to CPI. The Civic Federation's Lawrence Massal says that, yes, Illinois does have a higher tax on gas than do neighboring states, but he says usually people don't notice, even when it doubled.
Most people didn't complain and see a price, right? Gas prices were $2 or $3 cheaper than they were right now. But what's driving the increase in the price at the pump is not the state's gas tax. It's not the city's gas tax or the county's or even the indexing of it to inflation. It's the price of gasoline has gone up very, very dramatically. So yes, when things are expensive, when people can't avoid paying them, they pay more attention.
And it's not just you and I paying more attention. Businesses are, of course, as well. Governments, yes. Politicians paying attention too. And that is why you're hearing a lot of talk about gas tax relief. There are calls for the feds to temporarily lift its tax on gas. There was also some talk about Chicago dropping that 3 cents increase, though hearing that had been set for that for yesterday wasn't actually held. And the governor's proposing skipping what is likely to be this summer's 2 cent increase in the state motor fuel tax. Massal says, watch out.
It took 40 years for the state of Illinois to raise the gas tax. And in that time, we often did not have sufficient state and local match to do the road improvements, to do the bridge improvements, to do the infrastructure that we need. And now this is the first time where we're seeing significant inflation. We are going to take off the inflationary shock absorber, which allows the funds, the gas tax to grow with the price of gasoline. That creates a risk.
I noted that Chicago's hearing on their original plan was postponed. I am told that the city is exploring some other options right now, and not just the city. Cook County Board President Tony Preckwinkle's office also says that the county is exploring ideas. With that, Paris, back to you.
All right, well, we'll see what's left in the tank for some of those ideas. Amanda, thank you so much. Chicago environmentalists had reason to celebrate when city officials announced that McCormick Place was out of the running as a potential casino site. They say the site could have been disastrous for wildlife and Chicago's crown jewel, the lakefront. But now some say they're worried about the remaining 3 options, 2 of which are located along the Chicago River. WTTW News reporter Patty Wetley joins us now with more. Hey, Patty, so remind us about these remaining sites and their proximity to the Chicago River.
Right. So one of the sites is on a parcel called the 78, a huge area up for development along the river between like the South Loop and Chinatown. Another is on the river where the Chicago Tribune printing plant is. And then the third is right across from Soldier Field. So still kind of along the lake, but set back a bit. And the concern from some environmentalists is that while everyone was so worried about, a casino spoiling the lakefront, there's been so much work done to get people to think of the Chicago River as an equal and natural resource. Fish are back. We've talked about otters coming back. And to have these developments like concrete right up to the lip doesn't really promote the kind of sustainability and natural aesthetic that people have been working so hard for decades, to say nothing of the dangers that these casinos could pose to birds, same as some of the proposals sites that would have been along the lakefront.
And Patty, is there any assurances from the city that they're going to address some of these concerns for 2 of those 3 locations, should one of them along the river be picked?
Well, all of the locations, according to the city, have had to meet or exceed the city's sustainable development policy. But what environmentalists say is that that policy offers developers a buffet of options to choose from, which might not be the right mix for those sites, especially when it comes to birds. So we're just going to have to see how much input people can still have on these developments, or is the track just moving way too fast for any other substantial changes to be made to these designs.
All right, one more consideration among many as this city council committee and the mayor go forward picking a winner out of the final 3. All right, Patty, thank you so much.
Thanks, Paris.
And you can read Patty's full story on our website. That's at WTTW.com/news. Up next, an all-new Ask Jeffrey, so please stay with us.
Ask Jeffrey is brought to you in part by BMO Harris Bank.
Okay. Can you get this? I don't have my wallet. Oh, really? It's funny how that always happens. Yeah, it's fine.
With BMO Harris, you don't need your wallet. You can get money from any BMO ATM using your phone.
Uh-oh, looks like someone can buy their own tacos.
Okay.
You could also pay them back with Zelle.
So many ways for you to pay.
Yeah, you know what? I'm not hungry. I'll just have some of yours.
Order for BMO.
Ooh, tacos, banking. Some things are made to be mobile.
That feeling you get when your phone is your wallet. That's the BMO effect.
Why does a Binny's beverage depot in the Lakeview neighborhood look like a medieval castle? The design isn't just an effort to make the liquor store stand out from the other shops. It's a reminder of the building's history dating back to the 1920s. Jeffrey Bayer is here with more in tonight's Ask Jeffrey. Jeffrey, great to see you.
Great to be here, Paris.
Or great to be there in Evanston. Great to be on Zoom together. All right.
Exactly.
Let's get to our question. This one is from Shirley Soda of Chicago. She asks, what is the history of the Ivanhoe Theater?
Well, I loved it when we got this question because I remember seeing lots of plays at the old Ivanhoe Theater as far back as my high school days. And as memorable as the plays were, the creepy catacombs in the basement were just as big an attraction for me, and I'm going to get to that in just a moment. So when 2 brothers opened the Ivanhoe as a restaurant in the 1920s, it looked like a castle from Europe's Middle Ages had been plunked down right there on the corner of Clark and Wellington in the Lakeview neighborhood on the north side. Inside, patrons could dine and dance in Robin Hood's Sherwood Forest and other themed spaces. The menu specialized in German and European dishes described as, quote, inexpensive but nice. The restaurant's name, by the way, came from a 17th century novel set in medieval England called Ivanhoe, a romance by Sir Walter Scott. One of the owners loved the novel.
All right, so now you have to tell me about the catacombs in the basement.
Oh yeah, you bet. So there was this sort of subterranean realm with eerie tunnels leading into a rustic bar with wooden tables. There were stalactites hanging from the ceiling and bones embedded in the walls. And according to many sources, the joint was a speakeasy during Prohibition. And getting down there was half the fun. Our sources told us that patrons would step into a cramped, open-sided elevator. Guests would watch the sort of brick walls disappear above them as the shaky car descended deep into the bowels of the earth, or so it appeared. Really, the elevator would just go down to the basement. The operator shook the car with his own legs, and the disappearing walls were thanks to just kind of this revolving effect.
Kind of sounds like the coal mine at the Museum of Science and Industry. So when did the Ivanhoe turn into a theater?
That happened in 1966, after a son of the original owners had taken over the business, inspired by dinner theaters like the Drury Lane and Evergreen Park, which were really kind of all the rage back then. The Ivanhoe's owner converted a garden and a vacant lot next to the restaurant into a theater, so patrons could have a meal in the dining room and then move into the theater for the show for an evening-long experience. And our wonderful producer, Marissa Nelson, found a former Ivanhoe employee who shared this image of the very first theater program, and also shared this great picture of the first backstage crew at the Ivanhoe. The Ivanhoe was a theater in the round, or actually it was a square, so the audience sat on all four sides of the stage. I remember this being really innovative, an idea that sort of distinguished it from the more formal velvet curtain sort of downtown theaters. So the Ivanhoe started out by staging lighter comedies headlined by well-known TV and movie actors, but not exactly A-listers. But things really changed when the owner brought in a producer-director named George Keithley, who had worked on Broadway and in regional theaters with, among others, the great playwright Tennessee Williams. Keithley shifted the direction to more substantial and challenging plays starring prominent stage actors like Rita Moreno, who was one of the first ones to be featured under Keithley in Tennessee Williams' The Rose Tattoo. And with Keithley at the helm, the Ivanhoe really helped to give birth to what would become Chicago's nationally acclaimed off-loop and storefront theater scene. It was known for rough around the edges theater that was both entertaining and also made you think.
And you mentioned Rita Moreno, who I believe has been on this set before with Phil Ponce. Any other well-known performers or shows at the Ivanhoe?
Oh, quite a few. The theater had a real range, frankly. The summer before Keithley arrived, the Ivanhoe featured Chicago's own Gloria Swanson, whose career had gone from silent movies all the way to the Hollywood classic Sunset Boulevard. She was in a play called Reprise. Jackie Kennedy's sister, Lee Radziwill, made her acting debut at the Ivanhoe in The Philadelphia Story, reportedly at the urging of Truman Capote. Her performance, unfortunately, was savaged by the critics and by her co-star. That show with Jackie Kennedy's sister was followed by Zsa Zsa Gabor in Noel Coward's Blithe Spirit. Among the most popular shows was a play called Status Quo Vadis, a comedy that took on American social class structure. And actually that play made a big impression on me when I saw it back in high school, although I have to say the play was panned when it moved to New York.
And this dinner and this show theater model, was that successful?
Well, sort of. Since most of the diners were also there to see the play, the restaurant would just clear out when the show started. This eventually led to the sale of the business to a new producer who just rented out the space to other theater companies and to concert promoters who brought in acts like Dolly Parton, Graham Parker, and David Steinberg.
All right, now fast forward to modern day. How did this theater turn into a liquor store?
So in the 1980s, the theater was basically chopped in half, converting it from an arena stage to an amphitheater. And the former restaurant next door became, you might remember this name, Gold Standard Liquors and Chalet Cheese Shop. And that business later changed its name to Binny's, presumably as a nod to the owner and founder, Harold Bin Steen. And then when the theater finally closed for good in 2001, Binny's expanded to take over the entire space. And as you can see, they retained the castle-like medieval exterior, and they also restored the catacombs and used them actually before COVID as an event space for things like wine tastings. And by the way, I love this last fact. The Ivanhoe is not the only Chicago connection for novelist Sir Walter Scott. The suburb of Kenilworth is named for another one of Scott's books.
Who knew? Jeffrey, such fascinating history as usual. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
And don't forget that you can visit our website for more details on the Ivanhoe Theater. And while you're there, don't forget to submit your own question to Jeffrey Bayer. That's at WTTW.com/AskJeffrey. And we should also mention, in the interest of transparency, Binny's is a supporter of WTTW. And there's more Chicago Tonight just ahead, so please stick around.
They are jewel boxes filled with diminutive delights in 3 dimensions.
Worlds now on display.
From the captain's cabin of a 17th century pirate ship to a medieval library in Normandy, France, the Cupjack miniature rooms inspire the imagination.
You really get to suspend your disbelief. That's kind of what it's all about, and fantasize, and it's the viewer creates the scene, they add the story. We just create a scene for you to explore.
Also on display, a recreation of Alexander the Great's siege tent from 300 BC. The works were made by Jay Cupjack and his late brother Hank. Jay and Hank are the sons of Eugene Cupjack, who in the 1930s created the Thorn Rooms at the Art Institute of Chicago. Those meticulous miniatures have been on permanent display at the museum since 1954. Miniature rooms can take more than a year to create, but when it's the family business, it becomes second nature.
I mean, it looks like it's a lot of work, but no, the drawers open on the little cabinets. There's no upholstery in the little chairs. You know, it's a lot easier to make a small piece of furniture than a big one.
For the first time, some of the rooms made by Hank and Jay Cupjack are on display in a gallery setting.
We have a show called Wunderkammer, which is a cabinet of curiosities. It's a word that came to be in about 1600. A cabinet of curiosity can be an entire room, or it can be a little box that you put something in, or it can just be an object itself. And so they were this combination of art and science and nature and mysticism, and they were actually precursors to museums.
The show also includes a recreation of the studio space of an esteemed local artist who has been working in Pilsen for more than half a century.
When Victor came for the first time to my studio, he was attracted to my stuff, and he decided to recreate the wall that I had, which is this one. And I'm really excited, you know, to be part of this show, because it's like, it makes so much sense to put it all together because it's all objects.
The real honor of this show is to feature the Cupjack miniature rooms.
When you've been making little wonders your whole life, it's no big deal.
The actual work itself, either you can do it or you can't. It's hard to teach somebody good design sense, or proportions, or dexterity. Neither one of us, Hank or I, didn't really plan on being miniaturists. He was going to be an architect, I was going to be an engineer. And then all of a sudden there we were, and now I'm too old to do anything else. Well, there's tens of thousands of painters, but there's not too many miniature room artists.
For Chicago Tonight, this is Mark Vitale.
And again, that story featured a local maker of miniatures who has a direct connection to the Thorn Rooms, those ever-popular scale model rooms on view at the Art Institute. And if you'd like to own a Cupjack miniature room, Start saving your money. The asking price starts in the low six figures. The show runs through Thursday, and there's more about the gallery and the miniatures on our website. And we're back to wrap things up right after this.
Chicago Tonight is made possible in part by Alexandra and John Nichols, the Jim and Kay Mabee family, the Polk Brothers Foundation, and the support of these donors.
And that is our show for this Tuesday night. Please join us tomorrow night live at 7. And one personal note before we go, we lost a member of the extended WTTW family early this morning with the passing of Don Voigt. Don spent many years here as a director, working on shows like Sneak Previews as well as Chicago Tonight and many other productions. Don met his wife Michelle here at WTTW. Michelle has worked here for 45 plus years and continues her work on a part-time basis. Don was an excellent director and an even better person. Our thoughts tonight are with Michelle, their son Christopher, and his wife Adrian, grandson Vince, and the rest of Don's family and many, many friends. And now for all of us here at Chicago Tonight, I'm Paris Schutz. Thank you so much for watching. Stay healthy and safe, and have a great evening.
Closed captioning is made possible by Robert A. Clifford and Clifford Law Offices, a personal injury law firm dedicated to preserving the dignity and rights of all individuals.
I've never seen anything like that.
Comedians Eric Stonestreet.
All I can think about is my grandma, that she knew him.
Yeah.
And I knew her.
And Melissa McCarthy.
I guess I've always thought people just kind of moved and scattered.
On Finding Your Roots.
Tonight at 8 on WTTW.
Frontline and ProPublica investigate how lies made their way to the center of American politics.
Misinformation that this group would create would find its way to Trump and kept playing a role in the White House's attempts to overturn the election.
And a growing political movement.
Tonight at 9 on WTTW.